My name's Amata, and in this Red Gaming Tech video I am here with a collection of news surrounding Meltdown and Spectre. Now, before you guys ask, Paul is back from Norway, but he is still recovering from his trip and he'll be back at it soon. But in the meantime, let's kick things off with Intel, the US government and China. Now, the first thing regarding this is that Intel are in a spot of hot water, as reports are basically saying that they decided to share information about the Meltdown and Spectre vulnerability with Chinese tech companies before they warned the United States government. Now, obviously this is bad for multiple reasons, because obviously they gave them a head start in securing their IT infrastructure, and of course it even gave them the opportunity to exploit that of a foreign government. Not saying they did do that, but they gave them the opportunity is the point. And even if they hadn't, the fact that they decided, hey, it's not important that the US government knows, but it's important that these Chinese manufacturers and tech companies know that we work with know. And as a result of that, which is a kind of tie-in item, US lawmakers are pulling up various tech companies, including Intel of course, for the secrecy surrounding Spectre. Now obviously a lot of the heat from this is going to be falling on Intel, as there's a lot of speculation that Intel have known since at least June, and there's even certain people who believe that they've known for a long time about this particular vulnerabilities. And of course we do know that they released Coffee Lake knowing that these vulnerabilities were a thing. So in the wake of the reports surrounding the secrecy and the rather selective disclosure, which of course I just discussed, related to both Meltdown and Spectre, US lawmakers are, giving Intel a bit of a slap, along with some various other tech companies like Microsoft, ARM, Apple, Amazon and Google, and there's a few that's unnamed as well. And basically they are being criticised by a House committee over allegations of selective access of vital information that obviously caught numerous tech giants that are based in America off guard. Obviously, this has led to a lot of companies scrambling to try and, patch up the holes as best as they can, and obviously has resulted in a huge expenditure to try and, as these companies try and secure their infrastructure. Now, they do acknowledge that it's not always best to, run to miss the US government the second anything goes wrong, the second there might be a security flaw for various reasons, but they still are not particularly happy with how they dealt with this, and you can actually read the letter to them, and I will link it in the description below. But they do say, quote, "While we acknowledge that critical vulnerabilities such as these create challenging trade-offs between disclosure and secrecy, as premature disclosure may give malicious actors time to exploit the vulnerabilities before mitigations are developed and deployed, we believe that the situation has shown the need for additional scrutiny regarding multi-party coordinated vulnerability disclosures." So basically, they're very aware that sometimes, it is not always best to report these things, so you have to think carefully, okay, how do we want to go about this, because this could go poorly in multiple ways, but they are still not happy with how this was dealt with as well. So, yeah, the US government is paying attention to what's happened here, and obviously some of the heat is probably going to fall on some other tech companies as well, but a lot of it is going to fall upon Intel, I would say. Obviously, they're not the only ones that have been affected. The list of companies, again, is Microsoft, Google, ARM, AMD, Amazon, Apple, as well as Intel and some unnamed companies. But I would say a lot of the heat is going to be on Intel for this. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Obviously, this isn't, the US government saying, "You're banned, disband your company at once." That's extremely dramatic and doesn't happen outside of bad soap operas. But the point is, they're not impressed, and that's not, the US government, you don't really want to tick them off if you can avoid it if you're a giant corporation. So let's move on to our next item of Spectre news, which does affect anyone who uses Windows, which I'm going to guess is like 99.9% of you, as Microsoft have had to release an emergency patch to disable patches for Spectre. So this particular Windows update, for those wondering, it is KB4078130, and Microsoft rushed it out over the weekend because it directly disables a security patch released by Intel. And you might go, okay, why did they do that though? And well, the answer is obviously fairly obvious, as the issues that the patch caused were actually more serious than the vulnerability it was designed to fix in the short term. We're not talking long term here, short term. Now obviously we have had reports since last week that the patch was causing some predictability issues, you know, machines were rebooting unexpectedly, and we had a comment from Intel EVP Neil Shenoy, who said, quote, "We recommend that OEMs, cloud service providers, system manufacturers, software vendors and end users stop deployment of current versions on specific platforms, as they may introduce higher than expected reboots and other unpredictable system behavior." So basically Microsoft were like, oh dear. And they probably got numerous reports from their users that this was happening, and obviously, you know, did the math, you know, back of the napkin, and thought, okay, this is clearly the cause of the issue, and released an emergency patch that was rushed out to basically disable it until obviously these issues with the Spectre patch have been ironed out. And they did say, quote, "Our own experience is that system instability can in some circumstances cause data loss or corruption. On January 22, Intel recommended that customers stop deploying the current microcode version on impacted processes while they perform additional testing on the updated solution." So basically, they specifically disable the mitigation which is designed for Spectre Variant 2. So, you know, Meltdown isn't affected and Spectre 1 isn't affected, but this is the update for Spectre 2 specifically. So do keep that in mind, and obviously if you are having issues due to the patch, then Microsoft have issued this update. Obviously if you weren't experiencing issues and you're fine, just to get the update that's going to come after this with it, you know, re-implemented, you know, but without the whole issue of rebooting randomly and, you know, potential crashes and all that sort of stuff, then, you know, feel free to do so. But obviously, if you are having those issues, then it might be best to just take the emergency patch and hope that it doesn't take them too long to issue another patch that comes without these rather, shall we say, concerning issues. Now, as I said, there is going to be a link to the US government letter, but there's also going to be a link to Microsoft's official page on the update to disable the patch against Spectre Variant 2. So go give that a read if you want to see all the nitty gritty and, you know, make your decision on whether or not you want to download this particular update and all that good stuff. So it is there for your perusal, but a bit of a cluster mess today regarding Intel and Spectre and Meltdown. I almost said spelt down there. That was kind of a weird. It sounds like a surname somehow. Spelt down. Yes, hello, Mr. Spelt down. But no, regardless of that, a bit of a mess, unfortunately, and I don't think it's going to become less messy as time goes on. I think, to be honest, while things are calming down a little bit, we are yet to see the long-running ramifications of this in terms of how much of a slap Intel and other companies are going to be getting. So with all that said, that is me done for this particular video. Thank you very much for watching. Your support really does mean a huge deal to both myself and Paul, so thank you once again for your support, and bye for now.